guys, so in my previous video I said I wanted to do a top 10 worst movie of the list, and then I had to think about it. Turns out I didn't see that much of what you call a bad movie. I've seen a lot of bad movies, but not enough to say this is definitely the worst I've seen, because I have seen a lot of B movies in my younger days, and I know how really bad some movies could be. So whenever I've seen people say, oh, this is the worst movie I've seen, I was like, really? I've seen worse. Well, my point is, good and bad is just a perspective. So what I think is good may not be good for you. What I think is bad may not really be that bad. And which is why I decided, instead of doing a top 10 worst movie list, I want to do a top 10 most disappointing movie. Some of these movies are actually really good in their own respect, but what I'm trying to say is, for me, they disappointed me. They did not turn out the way I wanted to, and I did not enjoy this movie. So this is my list, and let's see what's on it. When I heard the director of John Wick is making another movie but featuring a female assassin, and it's gonna be a female version of John Wick, I was really excited. The action scenes in the movie were good, but it's the story that really let down. They try to be more convoluted than they should be, and sometimes I just couldn't get invested in the character. It has great visual and great fight choreography, but the charm just stops there. In essence, Thor Ragnarok, it's actually a really good movie. But here's the thing. Before I come into the movie, everyone was praising the hell out of this movie. Many of my respected reviewers even said Thor Ragnarok is one of the best MCU movie ever made. So I had a lot of expectation, but when I came to see it, it's pretty good. But it's nowhere near as great. In fact, I barely called it decent. Because when I see this movie, I felt like it's two movies cut and pasted together. On the other hand, on the one hand, you have those great comedy when they were in the Hulk planets. Well, I call them Hulk planets. I know they have a different name, but that's what I call it. That part was great. It looks amazing. It kind of reminds me of a little bit Tron Legacy with its music. But on the other hand, you have the dollar kind of a side story with Hela going on in Asgard. And for me, I felt like the two just didn't mash. Felt like two different directors made this movie. A couple years ago, when the first Kingsman came out, nobody heard of it, the trailer doesn't look good, and it was a blast, and people enjoyed it, and it was probably one of my favorite films of that year. Now, when this Kingsman came out, the trailer looks awesome, and there was a lot of hype, and then when I came in, and it's kind of disappointing. It's not as bad as people made it out to be. There is a theme, there is a core, there is a heart in this film. But I felt like some of the subplots, especially the one with Elton John, just went on for a little bit too long. And the villain is not as good as Samuel L. Jackson. Julianne Moore is a good actress. She is just not as good as Samuel L. Jackson in this case. So in the long run, it's kind of disappointing. It's not bad. It's just meh. Musicals should go like bread and butter for me, and especially it should be the case for Greatest Showman, because this year I seen Hugh Jackman perform in Logan, and seeing him doing what he's best at should be really good. While the musics are good, the visuals are good, it's certainly not a bad movie. It's just, once again, the story was kind of a jumbled mess, and it felt like they're trying to push one song after another instead of trying to build the emotional foundation for the music. And this is a really eye-candy yet disappointing movie. I really want to love it. I just don't. I love Daikaiju movie. I like Pacific Rim. I've watched almost every single Godzilla movie there is, and even Gamera movies. The fact I'm saying Kong Skull Island felt really boring to me should really say a lot. This film tried to have those Apocalypse Now feel, and they tried to make it a really, really grand and epic monster movie, but it just didn't work. The characters, especially from Tom Hiddleston, from all people. Tom Hiddleston was a really good actor. Brie Larson was a really good actor. What happened? They were so boring in this movie. And the fights felt really dragged, not until the ending. So, this is a very, very disappointing movie. I remember a couple months ago, a friend of mine recommended me the first Transponding movie. I saw it and it was like, how come I missed this? Danny Boyle made such an amazing movie. It's so interesting, it's so funny, but yet it's so dark and gritty. I love this. And when I heard Transponding II is coming to America and they had a limited release, I was really jacked up. I was like, I'm ready for it. And when I saw the movie, it felt like the essence is still there, but the film is more like a nostalgic trip rather than trying to make its own movie. There's too many subplots. The film doesn't know where to focus, and I felt like the ending is extremely underwhelming, and that's why it's very disappointing for me. A couple months ago, when I first saw the trailer for Downsizing, me and my friend were saying, this is one of the most boring trailer I've seen. So when I come in to see the film, I had extremely low expectation. The only reason why I went to see it was I went to see Last Jedi for a third time with another friend of mine. So I was like, you know what, we should go into the theater, see something before going home, because it is a long trip going back home. So I went to see Downsizing, which is like the only film in the time slot. And the fact it still disappoints me should tell you a lot of how I felt about this film. The plot is messy, it felt disjointed, it felt like I've been watching an hour of setup in a 2-hour movie. The acting was really, really dull. Most of the actors, apart from Hong Chu, felt like they were performing for a TV commercial. It's bad. I think Ben Affleck is a very underrated actor and director. He is a great Batman. He is really good in Gone Baby and Sum of All Fears. He also made Argo and The Town, which are really two very decent movies. However, here, I just don't see how talented he is. Live by Night is a very crowded movie where there's so many different themes. Film noir, mafia, love story. It felt like there's a lot of things going on, but none of them were very balanced out. The whole film felt it's a Ben Affleck movie, and by that I meant it felt like Ben Affleck is at the center of the attention. All the other actors are just going along with it. It's really boring, very slow paced, and I was not really invested in any of the story. Now, this might be a little bit too harsh, because in hindsight, I think in its own way, it's pretty good, and lots of people were saying it's the best film of the year. But unfortunately for me, it just doesn't click at all. The film has no character, has no story, and I felt like I know what they're going for. They're going for the urgency of this specific event. after all, it's one of the biggest retreats ever, but I never felt a sense of heroism throughout the film, which is a shame because I personally really love war movies, and I think Christopher Nolan, even though I disagree with some of his directing style, was a really talented director. And seeing this movie just felt really, really dull. It reminds me of the 10 minutes IMAX preview clip we have for Dunkirk in the premiere of Wonder Woman. It felt like those 10 minutes just expanded into a 30 minutes, and it's just action, action, action. Not even that good of an action, at least in my opinion. And they made it into like an hour and a half movie. So yes, as a war movie, this is very disappointing. I did not like this film. I'm sorry, I even give it a second try, it still doesn't work. Now when I heard Universal are making a dark universe to compete with MCU and DCEU, I thought to myself, it's kind of interesting, but it's extremely difficult to pull off because the fan base of the Universal horror film were decades ago, even almost centuries ago. They're very old film, and the most memorable ones are the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie, which are not that well critically received. And so the idea of them trying to compete with Marvel and DC seemed a little bit far-fetched. Even with that, I was just thinking this should be an entertaining movie because it has Tom Cruise and it's action, so at least it's fun. But no, this is probably one of the worst films I've seen this year. There's probably only one good scene with the with the airplane crashing. The rest of the movie, it's just really, really boring, and halfway through it just become a Jekyll and Hyde, a Russell Crowe movie instead of a Tom Cruise movie. This is not even a good Tom Cruise movie per se. So this is the most disappointing movie of the year, not only because it didn't meet my expectation, it's not a good movie in general as a whole. Wow, this is a very fast list. Like people say, hate is an emotion too strong for something you don't like. And I would totally agree with that. Well, technically I don't hate those movies, they were just disappointing, they just didn't meet my expectation. And that's one of the best things for 2017 movies. There were so many movies that people have so many different opinions. There's no one single movie that's absolutely everyone loved. There's always some people who didn't like it for valid reasons. And I felt like this is why this should happening, because it shows that we are diversified and we are paying attention, we have more passion for these movies. So don't let the slow box office number fool you. This year had a lot of great movies, and I had a huge ride, and I'm hoping next year the movies could even be better. Guys, thank you so much for watching my video. I originally had a underappreciated list planned out, but I felt like I have a really stricter time schedule. There's a lot of things I need to do, so I don't think I have the time for that list. So these are the two last videos I'm gonna make at the end of the year. And please wait for my new videos coming in 2018. There will be a lot of more surprises, not just movie reviews, but I have other projects planned for my YouTube channel as well. And finally, as always, if you think I'm good, you're pretty good too. And Happy New Year!